Hoover Board of Education's monthly meeting will now be called to order. We'd like to welcome Dr. Buddy Gray to deliver our message tonight. Thank you for being here.
I'm going to pray in just a second, but because today is 9/11, I want us to think about that for just a minute. And as I say that, depending on your age, I know that you have different memories, but those of us that have any age on us, we remember that day very well. I remember listening to Rick and Bubba, and I was pulling in the parking lot, and they said a plane had just hit a building. I remember going to my office, turning on the TV, and while watching, seeing that other plane hit. And I will never remember, I'll never forget that day. I'm sure that you remember that as well. And so as we think, meditate, and pray, I just want us to think about that for a second. So let me pray for us, okay? Well, Lord, on this day we do remember September 11th, 2001. We remember all the lives that were lost in New York City, Washington, D.C., Flight 93 in Pennsylvania. And Lord, we lament death's reign, the visible and invisible forces of evil, the principalities and powers of this dark world, and the evil that lurks in the hearts of all people, including our own. Lord, we're thankful for so many people that rushed in to help, all the first responders, the people that sacrificed their lives to hopefully save the lives of others. And Lord, when we look at death and dying and injustice and hurt, we cry out with the psalmist, how long, O Lord? How long will you withhold your justice from a world that is desperate to see it? So Lord, I thank you for the people in this room. I thank you for the difference that they have made and will continue to make. And Lord, we join our hearts together and we ask that you will work in our lives and the lives of the people in our community. We pray for our country, O God. God, we ask that you will give wisdom to our leaders, both locally and globally. Lord, we ask that by your grace they will lead with wisdom and justice and work for peace. Father, we ask that you will protect our loved ones and families who serve overseas. We pray for the fatherless and the widow, the poor and the oppressed. And Lord, we acknowledge that all our hopes are in you. And our longings point us to the one who will return one day to bring us everlasting peace and justice. So we say, blessed are those who hope in the Lord. The Lord who made the heaven and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them. The one who keeps faith forever, who executes justice for the oppressed, who gives food to the hungry, the Lord who sets the prisoners free and opens the eyes of the blind and lifts up those who are bowed down, the Lord who loves righteousness and watches over sojourners, the one who upholds the widows and the fatherless. Lord, we are looking to you for our strength and our guidance, even our goodness, for you are good to all generations. We praise you, O Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Please rise and honor our country by saying the pledge of allegiance with me, please. Salute. Pledge of allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. White, do you mind calling roll to establish a quorum tonight?
Deanna Bowman. Here. Greg Kelly.
Here.
Herman Kendrick.
Here.
Amy Mudano. Here. Amy Thompson. Here.
We've established a quorum for our meeting tonight. Before you, board, you have the agenda for today's board meeting. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda? I'm sorry, Dr. Murphy. I knew you.
May I just ask for an amendment to the budget as it's presented with a request to go into executive session to address good name and character and a student matter.
We need a motion to adopt, to change the agenda. We have a motion to change the agenda. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so I'll establish executive session with. There it is.
Can
Okay.
you attest to?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I would attest that's an appropriate reason for executive session under the Open Meetings Act.
Thank you.
Okay, so we motion to change and adopted the agenda, so we're good there. Okay. Now is the best time, I think, for all of us, our recognition time. Turn that over to Mr. Gaston.
All right. Good evening.
back there. A lot of recognitions tonight. That's why the room is packed. As Mr. Kelly alluded to, no shortage of honorees across Hoover City Schools. We're delighted to recognize those individuals and educators each month. First up is Mr. Kevin Beasley, 6th grade science teacher at Berry Middle School. You can see him there. Dr. Robbins, his principal, can take credit for this center photo. The photos on the side I took yesterday in his classroom. I had the privilege of being there, observing him doing a lesson on snow days and some of the science behind that and how meteorologists arrive at their decisions to close school early or help us make that decision. And it's something that hits all too close to home for us, especially when you're showing those Snowmageddon slides. So a little PTSD there for us. But you can see there on the bottom of the slide, he is a finalist for the Presidential Award for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching, one of 3 in Alabama. So congratulations, Mr. Beasley.
Thanks for what you did.
Next up, Miss LaRue Frederick. I believe I saw her walk in. If she will be making her way forward. She's a longtime educator with Hoover City Schools. Was at River Chase Elementary up until last year. This year began a split position at South Shadescrest Elementary School as assistant principal and STEAM facilitator. We're recognizing her for 2 accolades. This past summer, she took part in a STEM education workshop put on by the U.S. Department of Defense. That was in Virginia. She was one of 24 recipients in the United States, very prestigious. And for this school year, she has been selected to receive the Dr. Dennis J. Sabo Fellowship with Auburn University. So she's also representing us very well. Congratulations, Larry. Third grade reading gains. This has made the rounds through our website, social media, and traditional media as well. So we appreciate our traditional media partners who have helped us publicize this. But the State Department of Education recognized the top 50 schools in the state of Alabama who had measurable third grade reading gains for school year 2017-2018. We had 3 of the 50 schools here at Hoover City Schools. A very big deal. In addition to the recognition, there's prize money that comes with that. We'll call it prize money, $20,000 per school, helped in part, or maybe fully in part, by the legislature. We've got 2 legislators with us tonight who will be recognized for other events connected to Hoover City Schools. But let's bring forward the literacy coaches. With us tonight is Melinda Payne, Cherry Johnson, Jane Curtis, and Karen Derrick could not be with us tonight. So I'm going to ask Ms. Curtis to be a spokesperson just to tell us a little bit about this.
Good evening. We are just so excited. We get to be on the sidelines and watch magic happen every day, and we are thrilled to get to witness what happens with all of our teachers, but we're celebrating tonight our 3rd grade teams. Our teachers take an engaging curriculum and best practices, and they just make magic with that to create a love of reading with their children. And that is very evident through the growth that we've seen this year. So we are so honored to get to work with you and get to cheer you on. And way to go. We're really proud of you. Really proud tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Curtis. And if Dr. Terry Lamar would come forward, we'll recognize the teachers from his school, Bluff Park Elementary. And he has his certificates in hand already. You can see the photo of his 3rd grade team right here.
Thank you. We have Miss Jennifer Delahite. I'll save you all so you can stand up all you want. Miss Mary Catherine Dodd. Ms. Beth Markram. Ms. Andrea Timberlake. And we have one teacher who could not be here, Ms. Sally Payne. She had an emergency to arrive, and so she will not be here. So, thank you all.
Congratulations. Thank you. Congratulations.
All right, next we've got Deer Valley.
I'd like to say one thing. We have two very important statesmen here, Central Wyoming and Representative Faulkner, which they will speak. This part of what they did is a result of the ARI reading initiative that you know that the last administration considered cutting ARI. We went over the funding in our budget hearing that rate approached $500,000. Hoover's one of the schools, and there's a few others that actually use that money for what it was intended, which was for reading coaches. And what these teachers have done is outstanding. It's not just what they did at a snapshot in time. It's showing progress, which is very important to us from one grade to the next. So we'll get a chance to thank you again in a moment, but just to let you know, when you go back to Montgomery in March, this is very important funding for us.
Absolutely. And it's important to know that these teachers will be recognized at a ceremony in Montgomery on Thursday.
We'll be there.
Thursday, 2 o'clock. Dr. Wayne Richardson is here.
I'm awful proud of our teachers and the work they've done to encourage kids to care about their learning. So at this time, I'd like to call up Holly Black. Brittany Hunt. Anna Gray Cook, one of our first year teachers, and just blew us all away. Jamisa McCall. Ashley King. She was concerned about her saddle traveling. Another one of our first year teachers, Savannah Rowland, did an amazing job. Emily Thomas. Paula Trammell. Trudy Wilkinson. And Katie Woolard.
Thank you for what you do. Yes, she was my favorite teacher. Congratulations. Thank you so much. Love and shoes. Congratulations.
And finally, Greystone Elementary School, we've got Principal Stacy Sox here with us to introduce her third grade team.
Good evening. I'm really proud of our third grade teachers, along with all of our teachers. They work hard for our kids, and we had a reading emphasis last year, and this was just some of the benefits of that emphasis. We're just disappointed that Dr. Johnson didn't wear her crayon outfit tonight that motivated the kids with last year. Christy Kelly, Shay Higginbotham, Anna Porter, one of our first year teachers, and Tracy Stacy.
Thank you so much. I'd like you to introduce
Thank you.
As President Craig Kelly mentioned, we do have Senator Jabba Wagner and Representative David Faulkner with us tonight. If they would come forward, I believe they have a special presentation for the school system.
Well, Senator Wagner's on the way up. You all know that we try to stay as active as we can, communicate with our legislature. These two gentlemen right here are very, very responsive. The list is longer than this page right here of the bills that either threaten public education, the Education Trust Fund, unfunded mandates. The list can go on and on. So thank you for what you do and for being available to just discuss it and explain what goes on. We look forward to the session coming back in March.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Great. Last week, Representative Faulkner and I had a chance to probably spend an hour in the library at Bluff Park Elementary. And I think we were both astounded. It is truly remarkable what was going on in the library that day. And I don't know where you are, but I know Dr. Lamar has a great staff. And thank y'all for allowing us to see what you're doing. It was truly remarkable. Once a year, we have the opportunity to hand out some what we call discretionary checks to the schools in my district, which is Hoover, Vestavia, Homewood, North Shelby, Spain Park, Oak Mountain. And tonight is that time of year when we hand out the checks. So I don't know who's going to be the recipient, but the Hoover City Board of Education gets a check for $28,000. I don't know if you're the appropriate one.
Mr. G, and for all of our principals. Principals, stand up, because this is obviously for you and to support your work. So wave at us back there. Good.
I also have one for Mr. Don Hewlin, who is hanging around for a few more days. He's principal of the Hoover High School. I've known this guy forever and a longtime friend, and this is $4,000 for Hoover High School. And the last one is for the old coach, Mr. Jen Grosso. Would you come forward? I've known him about as long as I've known Don Hewlin. I first knew him as the baseball coach at Berry High School.
Well, I'm not as old as
It's $4,000 also. I don't know if y'all noticed, but we have matching coats.
All right, so I have to do whatever Jabbo tells me, and I
I wore his coat tonight just to honor him. I'm David Faulkner. I'm state representative and represent an area of Hoover, District 46, South Bluff Park, Lake Crest area, around Prince of Peace Church, the Preserve, that area. It's been a real honor the last 4 years to represent this area. My check's a little smaller than Jabo's, but I want you to know what I've made a point to do every year, because I care deeply about your children. I care deeply about Hoover schools and the children that go to school there. And I've tried to go visit all the schools in my district, try to every year. And I also welcome your kids when they come to Montgomery. And that's really a highlight for me, is that meeting those fourth graders down there. And it's been a fun time to do that. And so I try to go, so my check's smaller, but I will be giving to each of the PTOs. I'll visit every one. I'll be finished by next week. And as Jabo said, we were at Bluff Park last week, and I'll be at Bluff Park tomorrow. But I also want to just say what a blessing it is to have represented. I have the 4 best school systems in the state of Alabama that I get to represent. And what a blessing it is to work with and discuss educational issues with superintendents and school board members who are as devoted to kids as I've ever seen. And that's across my district. And that goes for your superintendent and your school board. These people care about your kids. And I see that, and I'm able to compare it to the other school boards and superintendents in my district. That's a real blessing for me. So I thank y'all for what you do for these kids. You're fighting for these kids in this school system. And it's changing their lives. And there's nobody better. So thank you for what you do. I had a chance to bump into, just randomly, I think God sometimes puts things in our lives. So I go into a restaurant last week, and I'm in there for another purpose. And I see kids from Hoover High School and teachers from Hoover High School. Miss Pat Chase was volunteering, working with these kids with disabilities. And they were learning life skills. And I said, what was going on? I didn't understand what I was seeing. And I asked, I went up to this lady, and she told me about what was going on, what they were doing with these children from Hoover High School, learning life skills. Y'all, it touched my heart. And I'm hoping that maybe some of this money will go towards that program for what they're doing and how they're working with kids. It was wonderful to see, and it really touched my heart. And I didn't even know that program existed. But I have a nephew in Louisiana who's had a similar program. But what was great to see those teachers and their passion for those kids. So anyway, that's enough. But I do have a check for $5,000. My check's a lot bigger than Jabo's, just not a number. So if I could get Dr. Murphy or Craig, if we could get a picture with this. When your checks are smaller number, you have to get bigger. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you again so much, Joe.
Thank you. We appreciate our legislators so much. If I might have the next point of privilege to acknowledge our board. Our board has received again this year the President's Award. This is based on your dedication as board members individually and collectively, your commitment to go and do professional development and to hone your craft and skill at this table. And so this is presented to you all for demonstrating a commitment to excellence in education through your boardmanship training. So congratulations to all of you, and thank you for what you do for us.
Thank you.
And lastly, I don't know, I'm getting old. Don Hewlin, I'm not sure if I ever acknowledged you in terms of your presentation at the congressional hearing, but we're proud of Don. He represented us at a national level in front of the congressional hearing. to talk about school safety. And Don, I just hear you knocked it out of the park. Of course, I got to see that live streamed. But thank you so much for what you do, and thank you for representing us on that national level. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay, tonight, do we have any public participation? This is a time of our board meeting, we allow that. Okay, good. If you don't mind making your way to the front, we'd like you to tell us your name, where you live. 3 minutes if you don't mind. This is for you to talk to us, not really an interaction type time here. But thank you for coming forward.
Thank you. My name is John Stewart. I live at 1103 Lake Forest Circle here in Hoover. And I'm the bus driver for Route 905 out of Spain Park. And I believe I might have a parent. But I'll be nice to that job. I would say I'm fresh off my afternoon route, but fresh may not be the operative word. But it really is a great job. Driving a school bus is a good job. One of the things that I think is unique about it, when I drive every day and I look up in that big mirror, I realize that it's one of the few jobs where we can say the future is behind us. I'm a retired engineer, so numbers are a big part of my background, and numbers are a big part of driving a school bus. There are all kinds of things that we deal with every day in terms of routes and counting kids and safety issues. But one of the numbers that I want to talk to you about tonight that I think is troubling has to do with our lack of substitute drivers and also the lack of regular full-time drivers. And I think in my background, when you have a tough time hiring key people, it's often because you're in a competitive marketplace. And I think most of us would agree that bus drivers and substitute bus drivers, that is a very competitive marketplace. Not only in the systems around here, but if you drive to the beach, there are even billboards that say, we need bus drivers. So, as an example of that, yesterday I'm told that we had, of course I know this as a driver, we had 5 unfilled routes. We had 8 absences among our drivers, and we had 5 on medical leave, which is 18 people out, and we don't have all the drivers we need. We have about 7 subs on our list. And of course, as you know, a sub is not required or able to necessarily answer every call. In my experience, if you have a staff of about 150 to 175 people, you can easily expect some 10+% of those people will be out. So I think you can see by those numbers, we're behind the 8 ball. And I'd like to share with you very quickly, and then I'll be done, what that impact is, not only on the system, you've probably heard from Mr. Bradford about that, but how it impacts us as drivers, how it relates to the kids, how it relates to you as board members, how it relates to parents. We have drivers, mechanics, office staff, and of course substitutes, and that represents a team. And when you're short of subs and drivers, then that issue has trickle-down impacts, if you will. When we're short of subs, who has to drive? Every bus has to run. We can't just sort of close the door on the kids and hope they'll be quiet because they got to go somewhere. So who drives are mechanics and office staff. And my wife reads Facebook and tells me that there are a lot of concerns and complaints among people in Hoover about I can't get a response, I can't get my emails answered about my child's bus stop, this, that, and the other. One of the reasons for that is those folks are out driving buses up to and including Mr. Bradford. So the impact, as an example, phone calls and emails are not answered timely. I think you all may hear the brunt of some of that. Another thing that's very important, repairs are delayed. If mechanics aren't, if they're not available because they're filling bus driving slots, then that's repair work that can't be done unless those mechanics are working overtime. And that overtime is expensive. If you take a mechanic who's earning $20+ an hour, pay them time and a half to work 12 hours a day so they can ride a bus, you all know the math. You do this kind of stuff more than I do anymore. Thank goodness I'm retired. But that's $30+ an hour for a bus driver. And what worries me as a bus driver is that that individual mechanic is very tired or frustrated when they're supposed to be fixing my bus. And it gives me pause. So I won't belabor the point, but I do think that possibly that overtime pay may well already be impacting your budget issues because it is being paid. And what we're asking for, I think, talking to our staff, is a raise potentially in the payment for substitute drivers. And then I'm not going to get into the question about regular drivers, but I think there's also something there. So there's an old saying, for want of a nail, the shoe was lost. For want of a shoe, the horse was lost. And for want of a horse, the rider was lost. Remember, those riders are the future, and we don't want them lost because we can't get enough subs and drivers. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Stokes. Anyone else?
Hello, thank you. For letting me hear me, I have some notes on my phone. My name is Vivian Sanders. I live at 3109 Chase Lake Fairway in Hoover. The zip code there is 35244. And how appropriate that I'm here to address you briefly and respectfully about busing as well. We are grandfathered parents, and every day since the beginning of school, our children wonder how they are going to get to school if one of us cannot drive them. So I'm going to hold my comments because of all of the accolades that you had today. I really don't want to this subject that goes on for quite some time about busing and transportation for all of the Hoover City School students as well. It's such a valuable education, as you can see at every meeting that you have, that it's important to be at school every day. So I am going to email our comments as well as Judge Hakaila, because we're going to email her as well. And we'll include everyone so you can just know some of the challenges that we're facing. And we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Anyone else? Okay, that concludes that. We'll move into, you've got something before that, we'll move into the action items. Okay. Board, you have the minutes from the regular board meeting of August 14. Have a motion to accept.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? That passes on the, Dr. Murphy, next item on the agenda is personnel action.
Yes, board members, you have before you the personnel action items. I would request your approval. This includes 13 recommendations for employment. I would point out to you that all of these positions are replacing a position, not new positions. Does include one transfer. There are also 7 additional transfers under that column, 10 requests for leave of absence. There are 7 resignations, 1 termination, and 21 contingent bus driver appointments. I would recommend your approval of the personnel report.
Have a motion to approve the personnel report. Second. Any questions from the board? Questions from the audience? All in favor? All opposed? Personnel actions are approved. Dr. Murphy, we've got a job description under title Mental Health and Student Support Specialist. Would you mind describing that for us?
Yes, we have a committee that has been addressing mental health. It's our Mental Health Task Force. And that committee has come forward with a number of recommendations for us. And that also includes some additional support to help address mental health. And so you have before you Mental Health and Student Support Specialist. It is a position that you have a job description for. And I would ask that you approve the job description this evening, along with a couple of others that I'm going to present, as we feel like we need to get these posted as soon as possible to get the support we need in place for serving our students in school district.
Okay. Do you have a motion to approve this new position, Mental Health and Student Support Specialist? Have a second?
Second.
Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public or staff? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? This passes. Thank you, Dr. Murphy.
There's a second position that we have before you, a Director of Equity and Educational Initiatives, and so let's talk about that position. As you all know, our school district continues to seek a unitary status. As you know, there are 6 green factors. We have addressed one of those with lots of time and energy, and that is our rezoning green factor. There are additional matters before us. As a matter of fact, I'd like to also inform you that tomorrow, the Department of Justice and Legal Defense Funds will be with us in a meeting with our attorney, Whit Colvin, and we'll be having conversations about how we move forward in terms of the school district and meeting expectations in the spirit of the law. This particular position is to continue to help us in that pursuit. Lots of reports, lots of data analysis occurs. Dr. Dotson's done a fabulous job of that, but as he begins to make a transition, that leaves us needing that support. We have talked at this table a number of times about whether we need a data analyst in our school district, someone that can give us data in real time so that we can use that data to not only inform our decision making at the central office level, but also to inform instruction in the classroom in real time rather than waiting to get to the end of the year and, oh my goodness, here's where we were, but can we be looking at that data in a meaningful way prior to that? So I've mentioned a data analyst of sorts to you, but I've also brought in a company, you may remember Glimpse came in and spoke to us, and so I've been in search and in pursuit of what does this look like, and I believe that this is a position that would allow us to support us with unitary status, and because unitary status is so heavy in terms of data analysis, it's looking at discipline, it's looking at student achievement and those gaps, that I believe also folded into this piece, we can have that support we need for an analysis, timely analysis of data. But also to take that a step further, and that is to then get that data to our principals, charts, graphs, longitudinal data. Here's where you are. We can drill that data down in real time to Kathy Murphy's class, teaching 4th grade reading, and what does that look like? And so I'm hoping that this is a position that can substantially support principals and their need for real-time data, support us at the central office in terms of our need for real-time data. And then I think there's an additional dimension to that, and that is, now what do we do with it? And the additional part of this title is about educational initiatives. And so as you look at this, you're going to see really sort of a threefold piece here, and that is unitary status, equity, inclusion. It's also going to be about data analysis, since that's so heavy with the work that this person will do. And then also helping us in terms of taking that now and being meaningful with it in terms of initiatives for our school district. And so I respectfully again request that you approve this job description this evening.
Thank you. Do you have a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation for the new position job description for unitary status diversity director?
Director of Equity and Educational Initiatives.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I changed that.
I promise I got notes.
No, and that's my fault, I didn't change that for you. But Director of Equity and Educational Initiatives, we feel better describes the work of this position. So, sorry, Mr.
Have a
Keller.
motion to approve.
Second.
Second. Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public or staff? Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
What kind of money is
Please,
set aside in the budget for that position? How much is that
Mr.
position
President,
pay?
I can't, would you stand up? It's hard.
Yes, sir. What kind of money is in the budget for that position? How much that position pay?
I'll ask the superintendent to ask that question. I'm not sure it's determined.
It will be a director position, and so it will be in the salary schedule under a director position. And that range can be anywhere from $83,000 up to $114,000, depending on the credentials that's brought to the table, the skill set, and where that person would fall.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? This passes. Thank you, Dr. Murphy.
There is a third position that I would like to propose to you, and that is a curriculum coordinator position. So again, as we think about the redesign, if you will, of how we do our work more effectively, again, I'm going to make reference to Dr. Dotson as he makes his transition from the building and starts to work more with River Chase Career Connection Center. I will acknowledge Dr. Jeter, who's now in place as our Director of Curriculum. But as we've thought about the design of our curriculum department, having a Director of Curriculum and having a curriculum coordinator will support our work, we believe, in better fashion. If you'll recall, board members, what we have is we have directors, we have coordinators, and we have specialists. So we currently have a specialist, but I would like to propose to you that we come to school for 180 days for the purpose of teaching and learning, for the purpose of making sure that the curriculum is strong and that it's presented well to our students in terms of the instruction and the assessment of that. And based on our conversations at the central office and how we best support our children in our schools, my recommendation is a curriculum coordinator. Again, I ask that you approve this position.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve curriculum coordinator position?
So moved.
Second. Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public or staff? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? This position passes. Thank you, Dr. President.
The next item you have, board members, is a request for employee drug testing company. We received bids from 3 different companies: ESS, Safety First, and Workforce. And we are recommending ESS that we use them for our employee drug testing provider. This is also the same company that we use for our student drug testing, and we've been pleased with them. You see the cost per employee for that testing. I recommend that we approve ESS for drug testing.
Do I have a motion to approve ESS for drug testing for Board of Education? Second. Any questions from the board? Dr. Murray, this is a change of what we've had.
It is a change. And Christy, HR worked with us some on this, so Christy, if you need to interject, please feel free to do so. But this is a change. In the past, we've been previously with EDPM, I believe, and that company is no longer a local company. I believe they've been bought out internationally. And ESS is a locally owned and operated company. And so again, we like to support those in our area, but also in terms of the cost, we believe it's a fair and reasonable cost. And it would allow us to use both companies, both for students and for drug testing for any personnel that we may need to drug test.
This is considered professional services, no bid required.
That's right.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the audience? All in favor? All opposed? ESS passes. Thank you, Dr. Murphy. Now business items.
Ms. Hancock, if you would, join us. I am asking in this motion, please, to approve the monthly financial statements for July. Also asking your approval of the cash disbursements July 2018 in the amount of $3,417,558, and also to approve August 2018 payroll at $7,292,329.35. Ms. Hancock.
Yes, board, before you have the attached summary financial statements and the general purpose financial statements that are based upon the reconciled bank statements through the month of July for fiscal year 2018. For the FY18 budget, 83% of budget revenue has been received for the 10 months ending July 31st. The variance as compared to the prior year at this time is a favorable $2.5 million. This variance is attributed to an increase in tax receipts and state foundation allocations. The results of operations represent 10 months of activity. Approximately 83% of the budget will be anticipated to have been spent for recurring expenditures. General fund expenditures are at 83% of budget and $1.2 million more than the July period for FY 2017 due to the increase of land and building repair and maintenance, office supplies, furniture for rezoning, the Hoover High Band Room, and River Chase C3 architect fees. The general fund expenditures year to date are $6.9 million more than the July 2017 as a result of the purchase of River Chase Middle, River Chase Career Center architect fees, the Hoover High Band Room, Greystone Playground, buses, and the high school's turf and track projects. Special revenue expenditures reflect 10 months of activity were $18 million or 91.6% of the budget. Special revenue expenditures are $738,762 year to date, more than the comparable period in FY17 due to travel and staff development, purchased food, classroom supplies, equipment, and furniture.
Do you have a motion to approve business actions? Second?
Second.
Any questions from the board? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The business actions are approved as read.
Would like to,
Yep, sorry.
I'd like to ask Ms. Hancock if she would, stay at the podium. Board members, you have had, 2 opportunities for budget hearing. And, we're at that point in time where we'd like to ask for your approval of the, proposed FY 2019 budget. And so that's my recommendation to you.
Do we have a motion to approve the budget, upcoming budget for the next fiscal year?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any questions from the board? As you all know, all of you are here, but state law requires that we have 2 hearings on our budget coming up for the next fiscal year. We had those. The second one was today. A very extensive budget, as it always is, and very important to us that it's understandable. So thank you for what you've done. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, we have 2 opportunities to amend this budget before it's final during the next fiscal year. So we do have an opportunity to adjust things. Not everything that's budgeted in there will be spent as it says. That's why the amendments can come up. And Ms. Hancock's done a great job of preparing us for what we see coming up for the next fiscal year. Any questions from the audience or staff? Motion approved. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you so much. And your staff.
Thank you, Tina,
A lot of work.
Michelle, Lisa,
Teresa.
everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We also have before us this evening proposed policy revisions, and you'll find behind your tab for parent-family involvement proposal. And so if we could just take a look at that, it's 7.111. And the only thing that you have under this proposed policy revision is that the language of parent-family involvement has been changed to parent-family engagement. And rather than No Child Left Behind Act of 2001, it is now Every Student Succeeds Act, or the ESSA. And those are the only edits. And thank you to Dr. Smith, who's keeping us on top of that. My recommendation is your approval of the parent involvement policy revision.
Have a motion to approve the policy revisions. Second.
Second.
Any questions from the board? All in favor? All opposed? Policy revisions are adopted.
Would also like to ask that you approve the proposed policy revisions from the policy pipeline. As you all know, we are members of AASB. We also utilize the service of the policy pipeline, which allows us to stay on top of the legislative acts that impact us as a school district, most specifically as it relates to policy for us as a school district. And so the policy pipeline recommendations you received this last month, again asking your approval. There are a number of edits based on this revision. You'll see those listed in a letter from Dr. Simmons dated August the 3rd. Items are struck through, the additions are red lettered for you. I think you've had an opportunity to read that. I request your approval of the policy pipeline recommendations and revisions.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the policy revisions as per ASB pipeline? A second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Policy revisions for your description passed. Dr. Murphy, this will be fun.
Yes, so we get the privilege of naming a new street coming into Hoover High School's campus. And Mr. Hewlin and I talked about how to get that named, and we thought it'd be a terrific idea if we engaged our students and gave them that opportunity. And so, Mr. Hewlin, thank you for getting your students to work with us. He did tell me he rejected Hewlin Lane as one of the options, but we do appreciate our students for their work. There were 3 choices that they voted: Champions Way, Finley Parkway, and Legacy Lane. And they have chosen Legacy Lane, which I put on the table for you. And I think that's a terrific name because, one, there is a terrific legacy at that school, not only athletically, but the strength of the school in terms of academics and character development, and we could just look at all gamuts and parts of the success. And so I think legacy is most appropriate, and so I ask you to approve the name of the new street coming into Hoover High School as Legacy Lane.
Thank you, Dr. Murphy. Do you have a motion for the new road, which was called the North Road, to be named Legacy Lane?
So moved.
Second. We thank the city also. Legacy Lane is, if you go out the backside, south end of the football stadium parking lot, not the mid, parking lot. This is the new road, the northernmost road that cuts over and touches Stadium Trace. And I know we have a council member here, Mr. Shaw, thank you for being here. The city owns half of that road about. When it gets to the ball fields, the city picks up. So thank you for the mayor and the city for allowing us to participate in the naming of that road. The city also came out and gave traffic advice along with Mr. Hewlin, the input, and there's a plan. This road is extremely important, not just its name, but it allows an emergency ingress or egress to our school. Up until now, we haven't had that. Mr. Hewlin, almost every meeting we would have, if it got remotely close to talking about, it expressed the danger we would have if we had a tragedy, a tornado warning, a tornado striking, anything. So the road's important in itself. It's very well done. If you haven't been out there to see it, it will connect over from, like I said, the football field out the south end of Trace Crossings and touches State Trace. I think the name is great. Any comments from the board? Too late to change it. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good. Legacy Lane is.
And then lastly, we have a proposal to officially name our Career Center. And Dr. Dotson has worked on that and has gotten lots of input, and the recommendation is that we call our new Career Center River Chase Career Connection Center. Dr. Dotson, may I defer to you? Anything you want to add to that? And would you mention the R from the Homeowners Association?
Yes, I did meet with the River Chase Homeowners Association last month, and they did approve our use of their R.
Just copyrighted.
As well as for River Chase Elementary, should they so choose to do so as well. So most happy with that. I'll go back and meet with them again in March. We get closer to the school opening and to work with the neighborhood and all the issues thereof. But the RC3 name has caught on and seems to be the name of choice just through use.
So the recommendation, board members, is River Chase Career Connection Center, with the knowledge that we do have right to the R, and that we'll make short reference to it in terms of RC3. I request your approval of the naming of that building.
Thank you. Do you have a motion to name the new Career Center, River Chase Career Connection Center, aka RC3? Second.
Second.
All in favor? This passes.
Aye.
Thank you so much.
And we certainly wanted to respect that community and their interest in maintaining the River Chase name. So we were certainly very respectful of them and that community and the name. So thank you for that. Under information reports, I believe we have Mr. Smith who's going to do a student transfer report for us. Wayne Smith. Mr. Smith, you're up, my friend.
Thank you. I feel almost like I should reference President Lincoln when he said 7 years ago. It wasn't quite that long in the making, but we've been working on it a long time to make the rezoning plan and everything associated with it happen. So we remember the day this summer when this happened, when Madeline Hackluck finally gave us the green light to go ahead with our rezoning plan. Although it had preliminarily been approved early on in December, and we had begun working on it, this finally said that after about 5 years of planning and meeting with all different groups on different levels, that we could come together and put the plan in action. And now it came time for implementation. And we had to implement this in accordance with a lot of different, what I'm going to call, enrollment groups. There were actually 4 of them that we had to treat very equitably in redistricting these kids and rezoning them and getting them or changing their school. These 4 groups, the first group was the group that was rezoned. These groups of kids were children whose their address had physically changed from where they were currently enrolled in school. We had another group which Hoover called internal transfer students, and our new policy we refer to that as inter-district transfer. We had lots of kids that were on internal transfers for various and sundry reasons. Some of them had been on an internal transfer since inception. And so we had to deal with them in accordance with what the rezoning policies and procedures were to be equitable. We also had a group of students we call employee student transfers, or ESTs. Those are students who reside in Hoover. Their parents reside in Hoover and they work in Hoover, but they don't go to school where they are zoned or live in Hoover. They go to another school, typically in the feeder pattern where their parents work. And then we had a group of what we call EOD, or employee out of district students. When this district was formed back in 1988, the policy provided for employees who live outside of the district to be able to bring their children to Hoover City schools if they meet certain enrollment criteria. So then the fun begins. I and my team, and there are a lot of folks on that team, I'm reluctant to try to name them all, that I might leave someone out, but Tara Simmons and I got to know each other very well during this process. My right-hand man, Bob Lowry, Lisa Lowry, and then for those of you that remember back when retail stores used to hire what we would call gift wrappers, after October I had Grace Reed and Beverly Williamson who came in and were just invaluable at working and helping us implement and get all these notifications out. And I would be very bad of me if I didn't mention Julian Smith, who works on Brian Phillips' team, because he was at our beck and call many times when we needed him. I'm surprised he even speaks to us, but he does. So let me tell you what we did. We had 2,093 students that were affected by the rezoning plan. That means that their address changed and they were going to be rezoned to a different school. So I felt, and when I say I meant we, the team, felt that these students needed to get a detailed letter informing them that you've been rezoned and where you've been rezoned to. So that meant making 293 letters that were detailed specific to that particular student. Did we make some mistakes? Yeah, we did, but they were minimal. Many times we called most of them before they actually went out. But we mailed 293 letters, and we also sent 2,093 letters, and we also sent that same copy of that letter home with the student to make sure that there would be no way that someone that was being rezoned did not get notification that it was actually going to happen. In that letter, it also informed the parents that if the grandfathering option were applicable to your student, that you would be mailed an additional letter. So in addition to that, following that mail out, we mailed out 743 intent to grandfather letters that were, again, specific to those particular students. Of that 743, we got 361 yeses. Those came in within a day or two. We had 156 no's and 226 that we didn't hear from. And from those 226 that we didn't hear from, we made attempts to email them, call them, send a message in a bottle, carrier pigeon, make contact with them some way, just again to make sure they had the option to take the grandfathering if they so wished to. In addition, we mailed out 100 letters to our current transfer students, 91 letters to the EST students, and 250 letters to our EOD, or employee out of district. Our grandfathering students. The grandfathering option was offered to upcoming 5th graders in our elementary school, upcoming 8th graders in our middle school, and then anyone that was in a current high school, they could stay for the rest of their high school career. And this was the number that is currently being grandfathered. We have 112 5th graders, 64 8th graders, and 225 9 through 12th graders. Now, at the end of this year, there'll be another outcry from our 5th and 8th graders because their grandfathering option will cease at the end of this school year. So I will notify them at the beginning of second semester Again, letting them know that they've been in that school on the grandfathering option, and then it will end at the end of that semester, and they will have to go to their zone school. The high school students, that grandfathering option that's a right they have till they finish their high school career. There was also a small handful of K and first grade students at 2 or 3 of our elementary schools that would have been rezoned to Trace Crossings or South Shades Crest that were given the grandfathering option, and there were about 3 or 4 of those students that I left off of this chart. And that just prevented them from having to change grade in the schools in the 2nd grade and then go to another one starting the 3rd grade. Interdistrict transfers. We had currently 93 ST or employee student transfers. Out of all those requests, we only had 1 that was denied. Racial desegregation transfers, we have currently 28. 1 of those was denied because it was received after the deadline. Now you think, well, that's sort of mean that there was only 1 application turned in after the deadline. But I vetted many phone calls from parents who called inquiring or requesting to fill out an application out of the deadline. So if we had given it to that 1, we would have had to open that back up. And at some point, we had to consider staffing because school was getting ready to start. The hardship transfers, we had 3 who met the federal definition of our hardship application. We had 34 of those that were denied. Tara Simmons and I spent a whole day going through all of these applications and vetting those for accuracy and making sure that we stood fast to that definition. And we earned our money that day, didn't we, Tara? But at the end of the day, we had 3 hardship transfers for the whole district, and we had 34 that were denied. We have 2 administrative transfers, 2 curriculum transfers, and then special services or special ed placement, we have 32 transfers associated in that category. Out of district transfer, or employee out of district, we currently have 228 students that are attending Hoover schools whose parents live outside, work for us, but live outside of the district. And then our policy allows, and this policy was put again in place at the inception of the school district in 1988. We have 4 students that are considered tuition students. That means they graduated, they finished their 11th grade year with us and in line to graduate their senior year, so they are allowed to stay as their senior year as a transfer student, as a tuition student. So that was it in a nutshell. It was a long and laborious summer. Did we have a lot of mad folk? Yes, we did. Did we have a lot of people that thought that we had just totally destroyed their lives? Yes, we did. But we had to be cognizant that these parents love their kids' school. And it was easy for us to know that they're going to another great school and we know the staff there, but they didn't. And we, meaning particularly my 2 gift wrappers, Beverly and Grace, were just so wonderful at talking through issues with parents and calling to schools and setting up appointments for new parents to go to the school and see a counselor or just running interference everywhere we could. Our principals just came forward and were so inviting. I had 1 or 2 principals. I called them about a parent that was particularly concerned, and they took it upon themselves to call the parents during the summertime and just listen to their issues and their concern. And our registrars, the whole Hoover family came forward to work with these parents that had to change schools. So it was something I hope I don't have to go through again during my career, but I learned a lot. It's all useless information right now because I hope I never have to use it again. But we got through it, and it's just time to move forward. Any questions that I can answer for you regarding what was done or what's going to be done or where we stand at this point? I know there were a couple of questions about grandfathering not being part of the new policy. It's not part of the policy because there's no need for it. It was just an action item that was associated with the movement of students this time, so they didn't have to change multiple schools in 3 years.
I want to commend Wayne. They had a tough summer. There was a lot of work, huge commitment on their part above and beyond what we could certainly expect of them. And so Wayne and Bob and Lisa and Beverly and Grace, Tara, all those who helped us with this process. Again, I know there were many parents who were concerned and upset and with the rezoning process, but I will say that for the number of students that we rezoned and the number of teachers whose lives changed also in that process, it really happened exceptionally well. And I think in great measure, that is kudos to Wayne and other people who just answer those questions and were steadfast in supporting those parents. So Wayne, thank you so much, and to your entire department.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Under information reports, I'd like to ask Jacade Reynolds if he would come and share some information with us. Board members, we have a request from AT&T for a cell tower, and I am going to ask Mr. Reynolds to share briefly with us about the request. I do not have a proposal for you in terms of anything actionable. I think there's some additional work we need to do in terms of understanding the lease agreement and making sure that all parties are appropriately treated in this process. So welcome and thank you for sharing with our board tonight.
Yeah, thank you for having me. My name is Jacade Reynolds and I work for Ansco and Associates. We're a construction management firm on behalf of AT&T Mobility. So what we basically want to do at both locations at Hoover High School is basically attach to an existing street light on campus. So there's two locations. There's one in front of the school and then one up behind the school. So I had the opportunity last week to go around with Mr. Hobson. Okay, you see the pictures good. All right. So the one on the left here is an example at the University of Alabama. So this is existing light pole there, and they look basically like the light poles at Hoover High School. Can everyone see that? Do I have any questions?
I'm reading a lot you've already given me. So
Okay, I know I filled you.
Thank you.
And then the second photo, it's kind of hard to see it, but it's at the right. It's at, if any of y'all go to the University of Alabama to see the game, this is at the soccer rec field, and that is approximately a 65-foot tall light pole, and the antenna is roughly about 49 feet. So that's what we would like to do at Spain Park High School. There's two poles, one at the baseball field and the other one's at the soccer field. So that's what we're proposing to do there. And as you see at the base of each one of these, there's a cabinet. It's roughly 24 by 24 inch, and it has all the equipment and radios installed in it. So everything's inclusive of the pole.
Can you explain the need for it? It may not be obvious. I mean,
this is like a path to 5G, which basically now from a data perspective, you get 50, 75, maybe 100 megs at home. If you have Comcast, you may get 150, 175 megs download speed, right? So when the kids come out of school and they go off the school Wi-Fi to get on this, they jump off the school Wi-Fi and they get on this. So this is a path to 5G, which basically 5G is 1 gig a second. Which basically, if you want to search for something now in this building, you're not going to have luck doing it. So this is going to help us to get to that from a technology perspective.
And we have, I did talk to Brian Phillips to make sure there were no concerns on his side of the fence as it relates to this process. And Brian, you confirmed no issues or concerns as you saw this.
Just we won't be able to filter what they do on it.
we'll be able to do
What they do on their cell phones, yeah.
On their cell phones.
Yes.
Which they can do.
They can do that anyway. They'll just do it faster.
This takes, my understanding, takes the need away from the very tall towers and it gives you local service. This is AT&T switches or
That's correct. It is AT&T service only, so it will not affect the other carriers.
you and I discussed the fact that if another carrier like Verizon or someone came on board, this is not an exclusive agreement. That
Correct.
can't get on our pole that you
Well, that's your pole, but we have distances, but yeah.
Do we want to discuss any other?
I think probably where we are at this point is to have our attorneys continue to advise us as it relates to the lease agreement. There are a number of questions that we have in terms of our responsibility is that of protecting our school district and making sure that we're favored in the process of the lease agreement. So we have had an attorney, one of our attorneys with Witt's firm, to take a look at that. He's has lots of questions. So I think, board members, where we are is that we will create a lease agreement that protects our interest, and we'll present it to Mr. Reynolds, and then we'll pass it back and forth if there are places where we need to work to negotiate. I think it's also fair to say I'm so stingy that I invited Mr. Reynolds to pay our cost for the attorney through this process, which he's agreed to do.
Absolutely.
Because this is encumbering finances for the school district that there's no reason for us to encumber. And so he graciously accepted up to a fair amount to pay our attorneys to make this review. So thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I expected a no on that, by the way. So,
No, ma'am, not at all. So just so everyone knows, the school will not in any cost. All the costs will be paid.
is there any cost for utilities for us in terms of running this?
Utilities?
We may have to go up on the lease amount.
So if the school was to provide power, and as we discussed with Mr. Hobson, it's like $300 a year.
We'll consider that an add-on.
Yeah, we don't want to we really don't want to put a meter on the poles.
Oh, yeah.
So we'd ask that the school board provide power to each one of the locations. Probably $300 a year for each pole is about what it equates to. So, and we're doing the same thing at other locations.
And there is an amount of money that you're willing to pay per pole to the school district
That is correct.
For that. So just for clarification. So thank you for being with us.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Ms. Rose, thank you, and there's been a lot of communication between you and I, and you've been very, very patient. I'm looking at one of our council members who's very knowledgeable in technology, Mr. Shaw, and talked to him briefly. He understands the 5-speed and all a lot more than I do, and he shared some things. So this is the future, and it is it should be a safety issue to our favor, because right now I can sit at the Hoover High School baseball field. I can't talk on my phone. I have Verizon, but still, so
Right.
employees, it'll be a plus for the employees to have communication. So there's a lot of pluses here. There's as we work through, like Dr. Murphy said, some challenges or opportunities. There's a reversion clause in here. It's not assignable. We can go on and on with the page, but you've been very gracious to accept our conversation there. So.
When we get to a point, I do have a presentation I can share with you, so I can email it to you, and then you can share that amongst yourselves.
Thanks so much.
Yes, appreciate it. Thank you.
You drove from Norcross, I believe, so.
No, I live in Asheville, so.
Well, you cheated. You told me.
Yeah. I did.
I was bragging, you came.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Thank you. We do
I
appreciate
appreciate
it.
it.
Thank you. Lastly, board members, I want to talk just a minute about school district priorities, and want to ask that you help me as we go forward and as we think about what the priorities for our school district are. We did the future needs assessment, we did the impact study, as you may recall, and just as a reminder to you, we were looking at about a $21.2 million investment looking from 2018 out to 2024. That included 16 classrooms at Berry Middle School, 8 at River Chase, perhaps some partial takedown of some of the buildings at Bluff Park, adding 8 additional classrooms at Bluff Park, and 8 classrooms at Gwen. Now, we'll continue to study where we are, and we may or may not, as we move forward, feel like all of those pieces are needed. But what I give to you tonight is what we've already said based on that study, and obviously it may be adjusted. The most pressing piece for us right now will be Berry Middle School, our need for 16 classrooms. Our estimated cost for that is $7 million. And in our ideal world, we'd like to have that expansion complete and ready for move-in fall of 2021. And so I just want to remind you that we have a number of capital outlay matters out there in front of us. And when you're talking capital outlay, you're talking about big ticket money items. And so this entire amount is right at $21.2 million capital outlay investments over the next, 6 years that we're looking at. I also want to remind you that as we are growing and as we are in the rezoning process, that has also come with some additional positions that we've needed. We're going to need to add 10 additional bus drivers. Actually, 6 of those I shared with you at the last board meeting. We know that we're going to need to add at least 4 more. And so there's a total of 10. I believe we had 4 or 5 retirements last year. We'll be filling those positions also. But 10 bus drivers, given their salaries and benefit, come to a price of right at $378,000 for the school district. Those are additional bus drivers this year that we did not have last year. We also have talked about our need, and you have approved for us to move forward with a route specialist. That salary is going to be somewhere around $64,000, and then a bus driver trainer in the neighborhood of $53,000. So, board members, we're making a commitment to our transportation department, if you will, somewhat above and beyond, to the tune of $495,500 or so dollars. We will, Tina, help me here, get some offset for some parts and pieces of this, so I don't want to represent that this is a cost in totality. There will be some offset, and we can talk about what that looks like once we get all of our numbers together. Also, as you know, we are continuing to address special education in our school district and to serve those special needs of our children. We mentioned during our budget hearing we've added 3 additional special education teachers. We've also added an additional 2.45 units in preschool teachers this year, and those particular additional investments are $263,917 to serve those particular children also. In operations, we have worked on the skinny for a long time. None of the positions that I share with you are new positions. HVAC is a position we had. We just hadn't filled it in a while. Plumbing, the same. General laborers and also a supervisor position has existed, has been filled in years past, but as of recent, those positions have just been left vacated. We do feel a need to make an investment back into our operations program. The HVAC salary being somewhere around 69, a plumber salary around 61. Picking up 2 general laborers will cost our school district about $76,000, a supervisor around $85,000. And so the commitment to operations this year compared to last year is going to be an additional $290,776. We talked tonight about our need to address mental health issues with our students and to continue to address the matters before us as it relates to unitary status. We had a good presentation this evening during work session from Tina as it relates to the increase for non-certificated employees under the proposed salary schedule. That particular salary schedule will pull about $1.1 million from general funds. Remember that the 1.5, 400,000 of that, we had the conversation about that being CMP, and that's just, we get it, we're just passing it through. So the proposal you had this evening is $1.132 million request. And then we know that we have River Chase Career Connection Center in front of us, and Tina had a nice layout of that facility. We will open bids tomorrow.
Actually, it was moved to next Tuesday.
Oh, okay, so that's been pushed out. And so that will impact our item that you'll see where I was asking maybe about a special call board meeting. But so we'll open those bids. We're anticipating those renovations to come in somewhere around $11,000. Tina walked through the rest of those pieces with you from equipment and technology and marketing and instructional materials. And so that investment for us is 13.3 approximately, best calculations for us, $1 million, 13.3 million. I say all that to say to you, I need help. I need your help in terms of us walking through some of these big ticket items. and talking about what the priorities are. We want to do it all, and in order to do it all, we have to know that we not only can do it for 1 year, but it's something that we can do and sustain with time. And so in the event we can't do it all, I need us to talk about what are our priorities as a board and where do we start. And I think we're committed to all of this, but what can you do and where do you start? What are the priorities? And I would like to ask that we have a work session at our next regularly scheduled board meeting in October. Again, perhaps a 4:30 work session so that we can talk about what's in front of us and how we prioritize these to best serve our children. I will also say to you that I believe that in order for us to meet all of the needs that we know are in front of us, and these are some examples, not all inclusive I might add, but in order for us to meet these, we absolutely will need additional revenue, and we're going to need revenue that is sustainable. What does that mean? I don't know that I can define all of that for you this evening. My brain has been looking and twisting and turning that. There have been some preliminary conversations about the lid bill and the fact that there's 2.4 more mills to get there. I'm certainly not presenting that to you as an actionable item. I know you understand that. But my responsibility is to always be thoughtful about what do we need, what are the requests in front of us, how can we meet that financial obligation and sustain the meeting of that obligation. And so I want us to look at these big items. I want us to put those in some priorities. I want us to think about how we sustain that and what are some other revenue sources for us that will allow us to sustain that. And one possibility very well could be getting a request forward to our City Council for the 2.4 mills to take us to the lid. It would require action on the part of our City Council. It would have to forward from there to our legislators to be dropped as a legislative action, then to be brought back upon their approval back to the city for us to ask our people, do you see the needs we have in front of us and the cost of those items, and would they then support us with increasing that lid to 2.4? So nobody's going to wave a wand and start imposing taxes. I don't want to come across sounding that way this evening. I'm simply looking at options, and it would require the vote of the people if we went in the direction of a 2.4 mil, which still's out there for us, that would take us to the lid. And I know I may be talking somewhat for those who are not that familiar with the lid process and all the mill process. I don't mean to, talk around or about, but it is something that I think we need to talk about as a board in a public meeting, perhaps in a work session next month, and to continue that conversation and get a timeline for how we go forward with some sustainable revenue sources.
A mill in Hoover is worth about $1.5 million, approximately, not exactly. So 2.4 mills, you can do the math. And like Dr. Murphy said, this is a process that, if it takes place, would require the voters of Hoover to pass. It's not a tax that the council will impose. The council, if given the opportunity, can just post an election if it goes through the process, so the people who live in the city of Hoover can vote. So this is a long process, but we have to do it now. The bigger picture is to get the lid bill lifted totally from Hoover, which means 75 mills could be exceeded. We're at 72.6 now, I believe. If the lid cap were eliminated, we went up 10 mills, you're talking $15 million. And even though we have this future needs study here, we know we're going to have another high school at some point. You have information here going out to 3 to 5 years on your future needs and the impact study. When I'm gone, I don't want someone looking back at this board and saying, what were they thinking? Because to lift the lid is a 2-year process. And that's if all the stars align, because it's a constitutional amendment. So we're talking 2 different things. We have to address the 2.4 mills, which hopefully we can do in the next few months. Lifting the lid is a whole other project, but at least to let you know, your superintendent and your board, we're looking out for what's, sometimes got to be dealt with, and we can't wait. We've got to get it started.
So adding to that, Ron, the bid opens on the 11th for River Chase.
On, next Tuesday, so nothing like that.
I'm sorry, that would be the 18th. Let's go another week out. So that is the 18th, and it's really important in order to keep this project on schedule that we get the board to approve that bid. And so, board members, I'd like to ask if you would consider a special call board meeting at this point for one,
Probably about a week after that, around the 25th.
25th.
We realize that that's only 1 week before the next board meeting, but that 1 week could make a difference on this timeline.
And whether that was an early morning, we won't have a full agenda, just we need your official approval to proceed forward once that bid is open and make you aware of that and make sure that you're on board. So shall we tentatively set a September 25 board meeting as morning meeting, lunch meeting, 5:30 meeting? What works best for you?
5:30 a.m.
Sure, works for me. Works for me.
Morning's great for me.
Okay. Maybe no?
It doesn't matter to me.
Okay, so you got 4 out of 5 that could probably.
Okay. Could you be here that afternoon? Is that better? Is the afternoon better?
I'll make it work.
We'll make it work.
Okay, 5:30 on September the 25th for the purpose of approving the bid. Okay, thank you for being willing to do that.
So we got an executive session, so you want to announce the next regular meeting? Okay, the next regular meeting that we'll have will be on October 2nd, 5:30. We've already just said we're gonna have a call meeting, but the next regular board meeting is October 2nd, 5:30. We've got approval to do an executive session, so.
One question, Chris.
Yes, sir.
On October 2nd, are we having a 4:30 work session?
That is my request, yes. So 4:30 on October the 2nd and 5:30 board meeting, and it's about looking at where we are, what our priorities are, and how we go forward.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thanks for correcting
Yeah.
that. So the work session 4:30, regular meeting is at 5:30 immediately following. We need a motion into this.
You need a motion along with the reason for the executive session, a vote, and then you'll announce whether you intend to reconvene after the executive session or not.
Board members, I'd like to request that we go into executive session to address good name and character specific to a student matter.
Okay. We have a motion to go into executive session that we're gonna get approval from our attorney to discuss good name and character.
So moved.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Okay, we'll adjourn now, we will come back and gavel back in. There will be no decisions made in the back of the executive session. You're welcome to stay here. My guess is 30 to 45 minutes.
There will be no further action items after the
Oh, yes.
reconvening.
We're not gonna do any business making decisions after, and of course, by law, we can't do it back there. So, thank you. Okay, we're gonna adjourn the executive session. Thank you for coming.